Hello, Internet! Welcome to episode 283 of the Assorted Calibers podcast, the Second Amendment podcast that is a little bit for everyone. I'm Weer'd, and with me tonight, she's amazing, she's wonderful, she needs to hear it, Erin Paulette! How you doing, Erin?
I have just been informed that I have a long-term sexual relationship with Amazing.
It's true. Because when anybody thinks about Erin Paulette, they think Erin is effing amazing.
You're sweet and all. I have evidence to the contrary, but I'm not gonna argue it. So, I'm back from my first ever Mars Con, and it was a very fun time. I got to meet some old friends that I haven't seen for a while, and some new people I haven't met before. For people who are fans of Larry Correa and are on his Facebook page, I got to meet the little sister of the group, Liz Yarbrough, and got a hug from her and got a picture. And there's actually a funny story that I tell in the group titled Doritos for Dinner. So I got to do that. I got to meet my friend Bryce Vineyard and his wife Brena, and made some new friends. I'm probably going to forget all their names, and I couldn't remember them anyway. So, I had a fun time, but as you can tell by a lot of the long pauses and the I am tired. I got in sometime like 11 last night, and I'm worn out. Just travel in general takes it out of me, especially travel within a few days of each other, and I'm still recovering. But it does look like, at least for the moment, I haven't caught any con crud, and that was good.
Thank goodness for sort of small blessings on that one.
Yeah. The biggest disappointment is that, and I believe I mentioned this last podcast, is that I was going down specifically to meet some college kids about OBS, and I wasn't able to do that. The gentleman who wanted to facilitate the meeting actually had an injury that week, and it required surgery, and so he was unable to drive them down to meet me. And so the good news is that he has recovered well from the surgery, and the reason for the surgery was, I'm not going to get into the whole thing, but it was basically, it could be bad. Open him up. Oh, no, it's going to be okay. So other than having to go through the surgery, he's doing well. So it was unfortunate I didn't get to meet them, but I had a good time. I'm told that there are videos of me doing karaoke. I have no idea if they are ever going to see the light of day. All I can say about it is what I said on Facebook, and that is, karaoke, much like cunnilingus, enthusiasm makes up for lack of skill.
Isn't that the truth?
And I was very enthusiastic.
Though again, Erin, I've heard your singing voice, and it's actually quite good.
Well, thank you. The thing is, though, karaoke is different, and I don't know if it was just because of the way the speakers were or what. Because, okay, I knew that I wouldn't hear the lyrics, but whenever I sing along with a song, I can actually hear the music supporting the singer. Mm-hmm. And I get up there, and I feel like I've been hung out to dry. Because, yeah, I hear the backup music, and I hear the drums and the whatever, but there's no, oh God, I'm drawing a blank on which one is the harmony, which one is the melody. But, the actual music of the words, it's like, it's not there, and it's just like, oh crap.
Yeah, well, that's a karaoke track. Is they strip the entire artist off, and so unless there is like a parallel rhythm, going through. Yeah, no, you are. That's yeah. You're what you're talking about is the melody, and what you need to look for is the harmony, which means you need to be listening to the bass and the lead, whatever sound and all that, and harmonize with those. So
yeah,
you're not.
I felt completely unsupported up there, and that's when I went, F it, I'm just going to go for it. And I think you've seen me in enough social situations when I say, screw it, and I just completely ham it up.
Aaron says, Leroy Jenkins.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm glad you're back. And
Not even going to ask me what I sang. Not even going to ask. Fine. Fine.
Yes, that is true. What did you sing?
So my first song, and I really had intended only to do the one, was Head Like a Hole by Trent Reznor.
Okay.
Because that was the way it works is that I had to log on to a website called Carafun and see what songs they had, and I listened to some weird stuff, and most of the things I knew the lyrics to, they didn't have on there. But there was a period in the 90s where I was seriously into Nine Inch Nails. And so it's like, okay, which one of the Reznor tracks do I think I can do? I think Head Like a Hole, because it's got that really forgiving drum beat. And okay, I did that. I had fun. And other people went up and did their thing. And then at one point, a woman, and I only know her first name, Nina, she went up and did... I'm drawing a blank on it. Weird Al's parody of Gangster Paradise, whatever that one's. No. I'm sorry, I got that wrong. That was called Amish Paradise, but it wasn't that one. No, it was not. She did White and Nerdy, and for reasons unknown to me, I felt challenged by this, and so I went and I picked another track, and when I was called, I told the DJ, give me just a few seconds before you start playing. And I got up there, and I said, I'm going to dedicate this performance to Nina, who threw down the gauntlet with Weird Al, and now I must pick it up with MC Chris's Fet's Vet.
I don't know if I'm familiar with that one.
So... MC Chris does nerdcore rap.
Okay.
And so think White and Nerdy, but faster, more extreme. Cross that style of Weird Al with, say, Eminem.
Mm-hmm.
And that sumbitch raps fast. I was gasping for breath at the end. But, okay, let me give you an example here. Cruising Mos Espa in my DeLorean. War is over, my peacetime Mandalorian. My story is stumped. Star Wars historians deep in debate. Buffet plate at Bennigan's. Rhyme renegade. Gonna penetrate first and second defense. I won't hesitate. Got a job to do, and Darth gotta delegate. Got something against Skywalker, someone he really hates. Whew. It's fast. And you heard me stumbling.
But you're also doing it from memory.
Yeah. Well, the reason I stopped right there is because the next one involved an F-bomb, and it does get progressively dirtier.
And so, was the gauntlet returned, or did you leave the field in victory?
Well, I didn't do as good a job because I don't know. At one point, I got just a little bit off track, and I did. I've got most of it memorized, but the words are scrolling off faster, and at one point I just say screw it, and I skip that part, and I just jump up and do the next thing.
Yep.
And it's fast. And so afterwards, Nina came up to me, and she said something like, I think we would have both benefited if at least one of the speakers had been pointing at the stage so we could have heard ourselves. You obviously know the song. Oh, I don't remember. There was something else. I don't remember. But what I took from it was, we decided it was a tie.
Fair enough.
I mean, she may not have thought that, but that's how I decided to interpret it. It was a case of, you know what? It's a draw, and we'll see you next year. And, we'll meet again on the field of battle.
and that speaker setup that she was referring to is referred to as a monitor, and you'll often see at professional rock concerts there's usually a row of speakers on the edge of the stage. If you're a fan of Rob Zombie, Rob Zombie is well known for throwing a leg up on top of one of the monitors as he's singing, and yeah, those are designed to give feedback back to the artist so they can hear both their the backing band and how their own lyrics are sounding through the system, and it is very, very useful. And I will also say, as a podcaster, I have my recording set up so that I am hearing my own voice through my earphones, so that I know exactly how I'm doing and what's and how it's going to end up sounding for all of you. So yeah, no, monitors are extremely important. So either way, I'm glad you're back, Aaron, and we're recording this a day late because you got delayed because of course air travel.
Mm-hmm.
But at least the door didn't fall off your plane.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, I board in Florida, and they go north, and then they continue going north because that makes sense. And so when I'm coming back, the planes are already coming from much further north where it is colder, and so the delays were because of the winter weather. And yeah, I was really concerned about the weather, but it was cold. But it wasn't snowing, it wasn't raining, it was just sort of, it was sunny and bright, and so if you're in the sunlight, it was okay. So I was really concerned about the weather, and I didn't need to be. But, if I had just taken it for granted, it would have been horrible.
Isn't that the truth?
So yeah, that's basically what happened up at MarsCon. So how are you doing, Weer'd? How was your weekend?
I'm doing okay. I mean, today's just been a crazy day. We are having probably the most New England winter known to man, which is not saying that it's been insanely snowy or insanely cold, but the joke about New England weather is if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes, it will change. We have gone from heavy snow to then warm tropical air and heavy rain back to snow. I literally actually watched out my window as we were getting torrential rains, and my street was actually starting to flood, and the flood waters actually lifted a snowbank off the side of the road, and it just started floating down the street like an iceberg.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, no, like I've never seen anything like that before. And I was out with my daughter with her paper route, and like the sidewalks are just glare ice because people are having their sump pumps running, pumping the water out of their basement, and it's running. It's not penetrating the ground because the ground is frozen, so it's running out onto the sidewalk and street where it's instantly freezing there when it hits the cold pavement. And as a general rule, you have wet basements because the ground is wet and soggy, or cold weather, but not both. And yeah, we're having both. And so yeah. Hopefully this show will come out good because Aaron is experiencing travel lag, and I had to on multiple occasions during this day run out and shovel snow and help my daughter out through this horrible weather. So I didn't spend nearly as much time doing prep work as I would have liked to, but I'm feeling pretty confident on these stories. So away we go. So let's dive into the stories. This first one is really kind of a follow-up of last week, where we of course talked about our absolute shock of Wayne LaPierre announcing his resignation from the NRA board. And this one's coming from Stephen Gutowski at the Reload. And the headline pretty much says it all. NRA claims LaPierre won't be on payroll after resignation, and the reason for his resignation is stated as he has chronic Lyme disease. And so really the two big takeaways on that, and actually I was I was listening to the this week's Reload podcast. They actually talked a lot about a lot about the corruption within the NRA and this pending lawsuit with the state of New York, and so who was it? Let's see. The board member was Rocky Marshall. Rocky Marshall was exposing a lot of things. And one of the big things that he was saying is something that I think listeners of the podcast should all pretty much know, which is the NRA has bylaws and they don't use them. And so given that the rules don't apply to the NRA board, then their statement that LaPierre won't stay on the payroll and won't necessarily get some cushy support role somewhere else to help keep him in lavish suits and living in the life of luxury until his final days is I don't believe it. I don't believe it, or I'll believe it when I see it. Maybe this is exactly what he wants. As for the Lyme disease, I'm not super familiar with I mean, I'm well aware of that, the common way to get it is through deer ticks and all that. I know that we had a relative who had a large number of neurological issues, and one of the questions was it Lyme disease? But I think we ended up ruling that out.
So here's something that I think is relevant. I know people who have Lyme disease.
Mm-hmm.
And what I have observed of it is that it being an autoimmune disease, the symptoms vary from person to person and sometimes day to day. People with Lyme disease are frequently accused of faking it because they do not have consistent symptoms the way someone with a more traditional disease would have. So, and I want to be very clear that I am not accusing people with Lyme disease of faking it. I do, however, simply wish to note that if you wanted to pick a disease to claim to have and not have to, obviously suffer from a lot of effects, this would be one of them. This one, fibromyalgia and lupus, it's not like you can just look at someone and say, oh yeah, they're suffering from lupus. You have to know them for a long time. It's not like tuberculosis where they start coughing up blood. It's not easily diagnosable. And that's why a lot of people with these syndromes do not get good medical care, because the doctors either they miss the signs or they don't believe the people and think that they're drug seeking or attention seeking or whatever. So while I'm not saying that Wayne is making a spurious claim, I'm not saying it.
Well, at least we have his word of honor. He's certainly been an extremely truthful man throughout his entire existence with the National Rifle Association and in the public. Well, so if he says that, then it's probably true.
What gets me, as we follow on to the rest of this article, is the way that the NRA's lawyers basically claim, well, now that he's leaving, you don't need to sue us anymore. We don't need to continue with this trial. It's all good.
I mean, that's the other big angle. In hearing about this, I'm totally not resigning from the NRA because of this massive pending lawsuit where it sounds like they know where the bodies are buried, and they've got all the evidence, and it's going to be a rock solid case. It reminded me very much of in the, I think, it was the late 90s. I mean, it was whenever the heck Robert Blake ended up going to prison. Those that know, Robert Blake prolific actor. He was, Beretta. He was in Our Gang. And of course, David Lynch's Lost Highway with the soundtrack by Trent Reznor. But he had a very tumultuous relationship with his wife. And then one day, according to Blake, he took her to a restaurant and realized that after they'd gotten in the car, he had forgotten something and went back into the restaurant. And while he was in the restaurant, somebody came by and shot her in the car and then left without a trace. And the horror. And at the same time that this was happening, and of course he ended up going to prison for this, on the Dennis Miller show, he had Gary Shandling on. We miss you, Gary. And Dennis Miller was like, "Oh, you're really good friends with Robert Blake. What's your opinion on his story on somebody else killing her?" And he said, well, he was having all this problems with his wife, and I'm not going to enumerate them because I don't remember them off the top of my head, and so I don't want to spread bad rumors on someone who was murdered. But essentially saying, like, he was having all these problems with this wife of his, and then all of a sudden he steps off into a restaurant and someone comes by and kills her. Nobody's that lucky. And that's Wayne LaPierre. Suddenly, just all of a sudden, I am too ill to continue. I must lay back on my dotage. And but don't worry, it's not all about this. And everyone goes, "Oh, he's gone. So now you don't need to worry about us anymore." Yeah. Nobody's that lucky, and the NRA's not going to be that lucky. I mean, this is like a perfect storm in the fact that I firmly believe that this lawsuit was originated purely as lawfare against the NRA, as both a virtue signal. I'm going to sue the NRA as your attorney general, and New York is an insanely anti-gun state, and so that is huge street cred.
I mean, I don't have it in front of me, but I recall seeing, and I could probably find it with a few minutes Googling, where then Governor Cuomo told his attorney general, I'm going to bankrupt the NRA, find something.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's not at all a conspiracy. It really started off as a witch hunt, and they managed to actually trip over a witch.
Yes. And when they did, it's really, this had been going on for so long, and it had gotten so sloppy that the evidence is all really obvious, and bad things are going to happen to Wayne LaPierre. I strongly suspect. I will be more shocked of Wayne stepping down on his own accord than if he ends up getting away with this. I don't think that's going to happen. And so, yeah, it started off as a witch hunt, but yeah, they stumbled on a witch, and now it's on like Donkey Kong. And Wayne trying to step down because he has chronic Lyme disease is not going to deter them in any way, shape, or form. And I think because it's a witch hunt, I think they will be more than comfortable of saying, "Prove it," if he ends up trying to use that in his favor. Because there is some seething hatred, but it sounds like it's overall a good case. Actually, in the podcast, it was mentioned that they're running a very, very professional show, and I think Letitia James has actually recused herself from actually serving on the trial itself because of all the political grandstanding, which is also a good idea. This is going to be interesting. This is definitely a case that we will be watching here at ACP.
I just had something occur to me. I wonder if Wayne believes he's going to go to jail, which I think is a very sensible belief, and is now laying the groundwork for compassionate release. I'm in my mid-70s. I have this chronic disease. Don't send me to jail.
I mean, I mentioned last week about Sal DeMacy getting released from prison early under compassionate release, saying that he was dying of cancer. And that was 6-7 years ago. And now he's working as a lobbyist on Beacon Hill. So, yeah, funny how that worked out. So, yeah, I again think that, yeah, there is no way that there's not going to be a compassionate release, a mercy of the court, statement about the fact that he is older and allegedly, has a chronic illness. So yeah, there's no way that's not going to be brought up. Especially if this is a fraudulent case of Lyme disease, as we would never speculate on whatsoever. There's no way that that's possible. But if in fact this was a something that was cooked up by Mr. LaPierre and his legal team, then for sure it was cooked up for the purpose of either mercy of the court or compassionate release.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move on to the next one. So, speaking of, witch hunts, this is this is actually, it sounds like this is being spearheaded by Letitia James.
Mm-hmm.
Is they are trying to get the Lake City ammunition plant, and if you are even at all a shooter, you should be more than familiar with Lake City ammunition, especially actually if you shop online for ammunition, especially military calibers such as 9mm, 7.62 NATO or 5.56 NATO. You will
but if you aren't, we want you to know that this is a manufacturing plant that is owned by the Army. It's run by civilians, but the military specifically owns this. Yeah, it's operated by the Winchester Corporation, and they're the ones that makes 5.56 millimeter NATO, what we use in M4s. I don't even know if we use M16s anymore. But yeah, that's what the military uses in its main, I don't know, I think you can call it a battle rifle, but it's what we use for rifles in battles. And Letitia James is basically saying this ammunition has become the ammunition of choice for use in mass shootings, and military-grade weapons and ammunition don't belong in our homes. And I'm not even using my sarcasm voice. I should be here. Ammunition made at Lake City has been used to kill American citizens in devastating recent mass shootings, including blah, 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 blah. The continued sale of this ammunition on the private market puts everyone at risk. And so they want to tell this plant to stop selling their surplus. And the reason why they sell their surplus is because the military doesn't always need ammunition, but the free market is always happy to buy it and use it or store it. And if they only made it on the government's dime, then they would spin up, they would make stuff, and then they would stop. And when things go fallow, well, it's not very efficient because you need to do maintenance. You need to, if people aren't manufacturing, you have to either waste money to keep them employed doing nothing, or you fire them and you have to bring them back on. And so the point being is, if you are the military whose job is to kill people and break things, you need to have a constant supply of ammunition, and you need to be able to very quickly go, okay, I need a whole lot right now because we're going to war. And then the ammunition people say, okay, sure, we will ramp that up. But if they had just been sitting there doing nothing, then it's a cold start, and that takes time and it takes energy. So it is not only more efficient to have the plant keep running, but because they're able to sell the surplus, that actually makes it easier for the taxpayer. And so there are a bunch of attorneys general, not just New York's Letitia James, but the attorneys general of, well, the usual suspects: Arizona, California, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Nevada, New Jersey, New Mexico, Oregon, Rhode Island, Vermont, Washington, and the District of Columbia. And honestly, the only one there that surprised me was Arizona, but then I realized they had that complete nutcase. No, or am I thinking of New Mexico? It was New Mexico. Right. So Arizona still surprises me. I don't know how that happened, but
I'll tell you right now. It's
okay.
Think about who their senator is.
Oh, Mark Kelly. Is that why?
It very well may be. I mean, Arizona is really the Florida of the West. I mean, quite literally, it's the state where people from California and Oregon and Nevada go, or probably not as much Nevada, but people on the coast migrate down to Arizona for the better weather and lower cost of living for their final years. And so there is very much a similar level of God's waiting room happening in Arizona as it does in Florida. And so because of that, you have the native Arizonans who tend to lean towards the right, but also you've got a lot of Californians and Oregons and Washington, people from Washington who may be more left wing, who are coming down and skewing things. So it's a purple state. And I believe in the most recent election, they had kind of a little bit of a blue wave.
Okay. That makes sense.
And I'm looking at the here. Actually, the one that surprises me actually is the Attorney General of Maine, just because. I mean, I guess we had the recent shooting in Lewiston, which of course is going to fan the political flames. But I will say that Maine has a Democrat governor, Janet Mills. But she has been pretty rock solid, and maybe she's not necessarily a full supporter of the Second Amendment, but she certainly has been an opponent of gun control and has been shooting down a number of gun control stuff, including there was like an assault weapons ban that was proposed and went into committee, and she literally just held a press conference and said, "This is not the right thing to do. I will veto it if it comes to my desk." And it never got out of committee. Mm-hmm. And she also said after the Lewiston shooting, now is not the time to start drafting legislation. Now is the time to figure out what happened and what went wrong. And then
how shockingly sensible. Wow.
Extremely sensible. I am very surprised because we had Paul LePage, who was very, very right wing, a big time Trump supporter, very bombastic like Trump himself, did a lot of really, really bold and interesting political stuff, of which, because of the nonpartisan nature of this podcast, I will not chime in about for fear of letting my own personal bias show on what I approved of and what I didn't. But he did a whole lot of things on that, and he was a very, very strong supporter of the Second Amendment. As a matter of fact, Ryan Machad he's from Waterville, Maine, and so Ryan Machad actually went to school with his son, and so he actually knows Paul LePage personally, and has said that he is a very solid supporter of the Second Amendment, and because Governor LePage was such a polarizing guy, very much like Trump. There's a lot of people absolutely love him and were crazy about him, and a lot of people absolutely despised him. And so when he lost his reelection bid to Governor Mills, I totally expected her to be like the exact opposite, essentially the mandate on the Mainers who disliked Governor LePage. And she is on some stuff. She is a liberal Democrat by all means, but not when it comes to guns. So I am very, very surprised that the AG of Maine signed on to this, because it seems like while we got we've got Angus King, who's an absolute jerk when it comes to guns, and obviously we've got the people from the Metro Portland area, which they might as well be Los Angeles as far as the politics go there. But yeah, that was a surprise.
So let me tell you why I think this is going to go nowhere. I've already mentioned why it makes good sense for the government to keep producing ammunition and then using the surplus to defray some of the costs. But James herself said that the federal government has invested more than $860 million to improve production. And she's calling upon the Biden administration to investigate and sanction and forbid sales of this to civilians. And I'm going to tell you that unless I am taken completely by surprise, the Pentagon, and specifically the military-industrial complex, is going to say no. I mean, they've invested close to $1 billion in this, and they need it to keep producing. They are going to, in my prediction, take a look at it, say, thank you very much, we will investigate it, and then it will be tabled and nothing will be done.
I think that is... I don't think one could make a better prediction than that. I find no fault in that whatsoever. Again, this was, the Lake City was started as a U.S. Army ammunition plant, and they, in part of their logistics, chose to hand over operations to Winchester so that it could be running essentially year round, instead of, again, having to spool down and mothball everything. And then when the Army needs more stuff, anticipating that need and spooling back up. And again, that would probably mean needing rehiring people and retraining people, because, there will be some stuff that was, even if it's the exact same crew, which how do you do that? How do you make sure that you lay off a bunch of employees, but then you can get them back whenever you need them, even though you weren't using them before? It's foolish. It makes perfect sense, because not only is it able to keep the company running, but the ammo that they're not selling to the military, they're selling to us for a profit. And it's really, really good ammo. And it's just ammo. Honestly speaking, it's military ammo, which means that it's not as crazy as all that. This is not like hunting ammo. If you were to buy varmint ammo, you're probably not going to be using green tip ammo or just standard ball, which is the type of ammo that's going to be coming through. You'd be getting soft points or frangibles or whatever. And so, yeah, this is not anything. No, this is really just good, cheap, plinking ammo. And so they're just trying to hurt us. You will often see anti-gunners quote the very, very funny Chris Rock bit about gun control, about we don't need gun control, we just need to make bullets cost $5,000. And it's a hilarious bit, but it's also a joke. It's not supposed to be serious, and it's not a serious statement, because the premise that Rock is saying is that people are buying ammo strictly to murder other people. And the idea being, are they $5,000 worth being dead? And that's not why we're buying ammo. We're buying ammo so that we can shoot for fun, and shoot for maintaining our skills and improving our skills. And you don't want to make that harder. You want to make that easier. And it's just... They're trying whichever way they can. They're going for any angle that they can to either curtail our guns, curtail our ammunition or curtail our rights individually, such as these, concealed carry bans, the Mother May I system where, unless someone specifically posts that guns are welcome, you're not allowed to have your gun. You can't carry a gun on the street or in your car or near a park or near a hospital or near a school. Oh, by the way, in most major cities, there's no place that's not near at least one of those.
Mm-hmm. I suppose we should take this, if you wanted to be really Pollyanna weird, you could look at this as a sign that the gun prohibitionists are getting desperate, that they can't go back to their usual method of banning the guns, so now they are doing increasingly desperate lawfare of ban the bullets, restrict the places where people can carry. They are doing the legal equivalent of throwing everything they can find at the wall to see what sticks.
I mean, that's certainly got to be true because, I mean, I guess you could argue that Joe Biden is kind of the anti-Trump in the fact that Donald Trump talked a huge game, appeared at the NRA annual meetings, and discussed how much of a proponent of the Second Amendment that he was. And then when it actually came to him being a president, he was pretty lackluster about guns. He, everything that he did was kind of off the record in the fact that no gunless legislation was passed, which is a problem. But also the stuff that he did he did one good one, which was the Obama. He nullified the Obama executive order that turned Social Security recipients who had a designated payee, had somebody who was managing their finances for them, put on the prohibited persons list. He got rid of that, so that was good. But he also did, push the bump stock ban, which is bad. And again, we had the Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act, and we had the Hearing Protection Act sitting there ready, waiting for his signature, and he let them wither on the vine. And so, but Joe Biden seems to be doing the exact same thing for that. He is hands down the most vocally anti-gun president that we have ever had in the history of this country. But the best that we've got from that is the Bipartisan Safer Community Act, which is... it's gun control and it's a pain in the butt, and it would be great if we could repeal it. But at the same time, again, think right now as you're listening to this podcast, what does that bill do? Because I could probably rack my mind a little bit on what's going on, but it's one of those ones of when the federal assault weapons ban passed, it was affecting you every day of your life. And when this one passes, ever so often something pops up that, that is a pain in the butt, but it's not something that is harming you every single day. So that is got to be very disappointing for the anti-gunners.
Cry some more.
Exactly. I like it when they hurt. And and another thing that's been happening under the Biden is there's been court case after court case after court case that's going in our favor, and that'll be a segue onto this last one, which again, this is a lower court thing, so there's still appeals going on, and maybe if we can get some Second Amendment supporters into some major government seats during this election year. Again, not stating partisan. I am looking forward to seeing lots of pro-gun Democrats joining the ranks of politics. Haven't seen any really expressly pro-gun Democrats floating around, but I've seen a lot of signs that they're out there and they're just not yet ready to let their presence be known. But at some point that worm's got to turn. But either way, we got to stop fighting the battles exclusively in the courts and really start passing legislation that just essentially just expressly says don't for a lot of these really, really crappy gun laws that are showing up in anti-gun states that will never themselves vote these gun laws out.
We are like 3 segues deep and we haven't even gotten to the topic.
That is true. And the topic is that a federal judge in a Florida court ruled that the U.S. law that bars people from possessing firearms in post offices is unconstitutional. And
I don't know about you, but not only did I not see this coming, I didn't think we would ever see the day. I was just completely shocked by this. Were you?
I was too, because for sure the prohibition of carrying firearms in federal buildings includes U.S. post offices, but say unlike the U.S. federal building, I mean, a few years ago, my wife and I needed to go to go do some business in the federal building here in Boston, and you go in and it's like entering into the secure area of an airport. There is a line, and there are armed guards, and there are dogs sniffing things, and they are looking through your bags, and you're walking through metal detectors and all that, and they've got guns, and I think they even had rifles, and so there was a lot of security, and there was a lot of armed security around this federal building, that you aren't supposed to carry guns. Would I prefer to have carried my gun? Yes, but if you're going to take my gun away, at least replace it with actual security. Actual security that is 100% non-existent in a post office. They are just wide open to everyone. They are in every little town and area, and they have absolutely no security whatsoever. As a matter of fact, they have less security because nobody's allowed to carry guns there. None of the employees are going to have guns, and hopefully, or according to the law, none of the patrons are going to have guns in no way, shape, or form. I mean, obviously, nobody has ever carried in a post office against the ban, and that's never a thing that's ever happened at all.
No, because that would be wrong.
That would be wrong. But yes, so the fact that it doesn't have any security whatsoever. It has no means of screening whether or not there are some people that may have chosen to ignore that sign and carried illegally in the post office. And it's really kind of a thing that most people have to do some business in the post office, at least several times a year, whether it just be stopping by to buy some stamps or to pick up some things or to mail some things. But I'm glad to hear this, because I will say that it's a pain in the butt, because it's not even like you've got a place to put your gun. There was even actually a court case where a few years ago, which that one didn't go in our favor, where the person lived in a rural area. I think it was Kansas, if I remember off the top of my head, but they did not have local mail delivery because of how rural the area was. So they needed to drive into the post office to get there. And it's a rural post office, so it's not like there's on-street parking. They've got a parking lot, and the parking lot is considered federal grounds as well. And essentially the statement was that they were told that they could not carry their gun, even leaving it locked in their car when they went in to do their business, and they sued for that. And that didn't go their way, but this appears to be. So we shall see if obviously this will be a repeal, because I'm with you, Aaron. I didn't think the government, this would ever happen. And I guarantee the post office and the government at large is going to be very unhappy about this ruling.
Yeah. As you mentioned, the post office ban was even worse than other bans, because, okay, I go to City Hall, I can't carry, but I can put my gun in my car. But the post office, you can't even have your gun in the parking lot. You have to park off-site. And so not only is it bad, it's stupid. And so I am really, really happy to see this go. This was one of those cases where I really wanted it gone, but I didn't want to be the test case. Mm-hmm. I am too old and too pretty for prison, and I don't want to risk it by making a statement. But I'm really glad to see this go. The only thing that bothers me about this is that this particular case, it's the person who was arrested for possessing a firearm is not a stellar example of humanity. And so what's going on is that this was not a citizen who was well, I mean, technically a citizen, but the point being it wasn't a patron of the post office. This is actually someone who works for the post office, a mail carrier. And I'm not going to say his name, but he carries, he is a truck driver in Tampa. I don't live in Tampa. I don't know if it's a rough part of town, but he had a concealed weapons permit, so he wasn't carrying illegally in that regard. And he kept a 9mm Smith & Wesson in a fanny pack. Cue all the outrage, but he carried for self-defense. And I don't know how they found out, but he brought the gun onto Postal Service property way back in 2012, it says. I wonder if that's a typo, and they meant to say 2021, because 12 years for this ruling?
The wheels of justice move slow.
They sure do. I was trying to find a thing to see if it was 2012 or 2021, and whatever. Anyway, usually I'm the one doing the research while Weer'd is talking, but I'm talking and I can't do research at the same time. So anyway, the point being is that it was discovered that he had a gun, and federal agents tried to detain him for carrying, and he ran, which, while I guess is understandable, I mean, if the federal agents know who you are, you're only making things worse by running. You would have a much better case if you just say, look, I'm not a harm to anyone. I am peacefully carrying according to my Second Amendment right. This is a BS charge, and I'm going to fight it. But he ran, and so that's resisting arrest, and so... And apparently he didn't just run, but he fought back. Well, either that, or they decided to just say he was forcibly resisting arrest. Maybe they say that anytime you resist arrest, it's forcible. I don't know. But that was a separate charge for him, and that one was not overturned by this particular judge. So it would have been better if he had been a shining example, but there's I don't quite remember, but it's one of those statements where if you're looking only for the shining examples of humanity, you're going to be disappointed. And most of these cases are done by people who have questionable motives. And the fact of the matter is that the law should apply equally to everyone, and it shouldn't matter what kind of person they are. You know, if it's wrong, then it's unconstitutional. So, And finally, while I have the floor, Weer'd, I want to state that this is yet another example of the gift that keeps on giving, the Bruin decision in 2022, because the argument here was stated that while post offices have existed since the nation's founding, federal law didn't bar guns in government buildings until 1964, and post offices until 1972. And so no historical practice dating back to the 1700s justified the ban. So that's wonderful. This is a district court judge. I'm sure there's going to be appeal. It's probably going to go up to the circuit. It may even reach SCOTUS. But this is something that I didn't expect, and I'm definitely going to keep my eyes on it.
I will as well, and I took up the mantle of Aaron Paulette while you were talking, and did some research, and I found multiple sources that say that he was arrested in September of 2022. So they instead of transposing the numbers, they put a 1 instead of a 2 in that date.
Well, I mean, that's good, because first of all, if this had been going on for 12 years and we hadn't heard of it, we would have been inept. And also, good Lord, 12 years for that decision. So, all right, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. So this is a much more recent case and contemporaneous with the NYSERPA decision.
Mm-hmm. So there are lots of gun companies who are frequently going out of business. I believe there's a story told multiple times about Weer'd and I being at NRA, and Weer'd saying, "Oh, there's the booth. I didn't think they'd be there because they're going out of business." And I went, "Oh, Colt or whoever was going out of business," and you replied, "When are they not going out of business?" And one of those businesses that I thought had already died or whatever was Remington. And apparently Remington now has finally fallen. And so this segment is titled Rest in Peace, Remington.
Hi, and welcome to Gun Lovers and Other Strangers. In this segment, I'd like to talk about the life and death of the Remington Firearms Company. Known in more recent years for the Model 870 shotgun and Model 700 bolt-action rifle, Remington made a wide variety of firearms over the 200-plus years it was in existence. These included, among others, the iconic rolling block line of rifles and pistols. At various points, they also branched out into other products, including cash registers, bicycles, and typewriters. Remington was one of the oldest gun makers in the United States, and it was claimed that they were the oldest factory in America that still made its original product. According to 2015 ATF data, Remington was the largest rifle manufacturer in North America. Over the lifetime of the company, Remington developed or adopted more cartridges than any other gun or ammunition manufacturer in the world. But where did it all begin, and where are we now? Eliphalet Remington began making rifle barrels in 1816 in a rural area of central New York. Being well made and accurate, demand for his product was high, which required expanding production. To put things in perspective, when that first barrel was made, James Madison was the 4th President of the United States, and Thomas Jefferson and John Adams were both still alive and would be for another 10 years. Following completion of the Erie Canal in 1825, the forges and foundry of the E. Remington barrel-making business were moved to a 100-acre plot along the Mohawk River near a town called Morgan's Landing. Later joined by his sons, the company was renamed E. Remington and Son in 1839 and E. Remington and Sons in 1845. Due to increased commerce and growth, around 1843 the village wanted their own post office. This required choosing a name for the community. However, since the Remington family refused to allow their name to be used, eventually Ilion was chosen. The village of Ilion was finally incorporated in 1852. For history and language wonks, Ilion is another name for Troy. There was already a Troy in New York, established in 1789, which was also known as the Collar City for its shirt collar manufacturing. That Troy is located on the Hudson River in the eastern part of the state. Specializing in rifle barrels, Remington purchased tooling to make complete firearms in 1848. Their products were generally well-liked and, like their barrels, also in high demand. 40 years later, in 1888, the Remington family sold the ownership of E. Remington and Sons to Marcellus Hartley and Partners, a major sporting goods chain in New York City who also owned the Union Metallic Cartridge Company and Winchester Repeating Arms. Both of these companies were located in Connecticut. At this time, the company name was changed to the Remington Arms Company. During the Great Depression, Remington was purchased by DuPont, which was well known for its innovations in gunpowder. A year later, DuPont also purchased the Peters Cartridge Company and placed it under Remington. To this day, many Remington centerfire cartridge head stamps are marked RP for Remington Peters. Immediately prior to American involvement in World War II, at the request of the federal government, Remington, with the aid of DuPont, built the now well-known Lake City Army ammunition plant, as well as several others. Though owned by the United States government, Remington ran the day-to-day operations of these facilities until 1985. In 1950, Remington introduced the Model 870 shotgun. With over 11 million made, it's arguably the most well-known and popular pump-action shotgun in the world, used by sportsmen, law enforcement, and military alike. 12 years later, in 1962, Remington added the Model 700 bolt-action rifle to their product line. This rifle became another one of Remington's most well-known firearms. The U.S. Army M24 and Marine Corps M40 sniper rifles are built on Model 700 actions. In 1969, Remington started construction on a new commercial ammunition plant in Lone Oak, Arkansas. A year later, centerfire ammunition marked under the Remington UMC and Peters names were being produced there. In the mid-1970s and early 1980s, shot shell and rimfire ammunition production were both also moved to the Lone Oak facility. DuPont, Remington's parent company, sold Remington to the New York investment firm of Clayton, Dubier, and Rice in 1993. 14 years later, in 2007, Cerberus Capital Management, a private equity firm, acquired Remington Arms. Later that year, Cerberus purchased Marlin Firearms Company and placed it under Remington. 2 years after that, suppressor manufacturer Advanced Armament Corporation was acquired and placed under the Remington Military Products Division. In 2014, Remington announced a plan to build a new state-of-the-art factory in Huntsville, Alabama. Remington said it decided to move 2 production lines from the Ilion, New York plant as a result of the 2013 New York SAFE Act, which severely restricted gun ownership in New York. Specifically, AR-15 rifle and 1911 pistol production were shifted out of New York to Alabama. Sadly, Remington filed for bankruptcy in 2020 and its assets were divided up and sold to various buyers. Remington Arms and all firearms production except Marlin were sold to the Round Hill Group, which operates it as Rem Arms. The Remington brand name and the Lone Oak Ammunition Factory were bought by Vista Outdoors, and Ruger purchased the Marlin Firearms Division. The following year, Remington Arms announced they would relocate their global headquarters to LaGrange, Georgia. In November of 2023, Remington Arms announced the permanent closure of the facility in Ilion, New York, effective March 2024, ending over 200 years of presence in that area, leaving behind a number of buildings, many memories, and soon another dried-up husk of a town. Remington was the victim of business missteps, short-sighted ownership, and, to no small degree, the passage of the New York SAFE Act. Their designs and products will live on, but an era has certainly ended.
This is the end, my only friend, the end.
That about wraps up this segment. If you have any questions for me or suggestions for future segments or a comment on a past segment, please post them on the Assorted Calibers Podcast Facebook or MeWe pages, and Aaron or Weer'd will make sure I see them. I'm also a contributor on the Blue Collar Prepping blog, which can be found at bluecollarprepping.blogspot.com. And finally, I'm a published author, and books with my stories can be found on Amazon under the names Brena, Bock, and David Bock. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. I'm David, and this is Gun Lovers and Other Strangers.
Yeah, upon the news of this plant closing, I knew David, being both the gun nut and historian that he is, but also being someone who grew up in New York, he'd be the perfect person to do this segment on it. And I can't say I was wrong. That was a great eulogy to a legendary company, and it is a shame, especially thinking about the generational families that end up going in these plants. That was actually, I remember hearing from someone who had taken a tour of Smith & Wesson, and someone asked, why are you guys still here? This is Massachusetts. This is a state that hates you, and yet you're still here. And they're like, we've been here for over 100 years. And so there's, and you know, that's the state hating us is a new development, but we've had multiple generations of people who have been working in this factory. And so we want to keep that tradition. And then the state said, well, not only do we want to ban most of the guns that Smith & Wesson makes, but we also now want to ban Smith & Wesson from actually making guns that are banned in the state. And that bill didn't go anywhere, but Smith & Wesson heard. And so they said, you know what, we're going to Tennessee. And eventually, right now, both plants are operational. I believe the Tennessee plant is the one making the high capacity handguns and rifles, while the revolvers and low capacity semi-autos and such are being made still here in Springfield. But eventually that Springfield plant's going to close, and that's going to be the end. And that'll be just another sad chapter. So yeah, it was a sad story. And unfortunately, yeah, Remington was such a great company, but in the end, they really foundered hard with a lot of their missteps, including the instance where the insurance holders of the then defunct Remington paid off a frivolous lawsuit, done by the anti-gunners, which is just going to fuel the fire. So it is a shame that they're gone, and it's a shame what led to their demise. But thanks, David, for that.
Was that the same lawsuit that the Phillips company did?
No, that one was the The Phillips family did the Lucky Gunner suit, and that got dismissed with prejudice. And then they were ordered to pay, and they declared bankruptcy and didn't pay. I'm trying to remember which one it was. If it was the Connecticut, no, that's against. That was because Remington ended up buying Bushmaster. That was the Sandy Hook families that were suing them, I think, over the advertising and all that, and they claiming that the whole Your Man card is canceled is somehow encouraging, or your Man card's renewed. I can't remember what it was a stupid ad, but stupid doesn't mean go kill a bunch of kids in a school. And to imply that somehow that is what that means is stupid and should be shameful. And they should have fought it, but by the time that this happened, the gun nuts weren't in charge. The gun people weren't there. It was lawyers who were just, who were insurance lawyers too. So they just said, yeah, it's cheaper for us to pay you off. Go away. And yeah, it probably is cheaper to pay them off, but what does that do for the future? But they don't care because they're not a gun company. It was Remington in all effects is dead, and it is only living on as a brand name with other companies.
Now, David may have said this, and I just missed it, in which case I apologize, but is someone buying out their assets, or is it all being sold to creditors?
It's it's essentially been split up and sold piecemeal. So like the Marlin Firearms has been sold to Ruger. So Ruger likely is going to start making lever action rifles possibly under the Marlin name, or possibly under the Ruger name and just using Marlin IP. And then the ammo side was sold to another I think the ammo is being sold to Vista Outdoors.
That's right. Okay, now I remember him saying it. Yeah, I just completely blanked on that. Herpy derp.
But yeah, there is no longer a big green. There's just a bunch of little green fragments that are scattered into the wind. It's been a little while, but I'm happy to welcome Tiny back to the show. And he's talking about a subject that I have a deep interest in, but nearly zero experience with: hunting.
Hello all in ACP land, it's me Tiny with another installment of Deep Thoughts from the land of rocks and cows. I've been trying to think of a good segment for a while, and David had suggested a while back doing something about hunting, and my ADHD kind of took over, so this might be a little wandering, but I'll do my best on the basics of how to get into hunting. Now, hunting laws vary by state to state, sometimes even county to county. I will only be speaking about Minnesota's state laws. I suggest you contact your local DNR or whatever they call your local natural resources officers. Contrary to what some of the old timers will tell you, they aren't out to get you, and as long as you follow out all the rules, you're better off being friendly with them if some Karen decides to come out and harass you while hunting, because believe it or not, there are laws protecting sportsmen while they're hunting or fishing. Well, there's lots of different hunting you can do, and there are generally seasons that govern what, where, and when you can hunt everything from squirrels, rabbits, and raccoons to bear, deer, wolves, coyotes, the four-legged kind, not the two-legged kind. I'm most familiar with deer hunting and pheasant hunting because I've been participating in these hunts since age 8 or 9, when my dad would allow me to go and carry my air rifle to learn how to hunt in a group and be safe. Many of the laws can be confusing and may not seem to make sense, which is why I encourage you to contact the local DNR. For example, since my childhood, shotguns and pistols are all you're allowed to hunt deer with in my area. And in the last 20 years, they've introduced a primitive arms season for just muzzleloaders. But north of an imaginary line here in Minnesota, you can use rifles. In my area, we usually go on stand early in the morning before hunting hours, and you're sitting in a small shack made out of 2x4 and plywood with some windows and a door to protect you from the elements, and a lot of guys run a propane heater to keep warm. And then you wait and hope that you've parked your stand near a active deer path. If you want, you can really get into it like some of my extended family have and spend thousands of dollars in trail cams and scents and all this other stuff that helps you track where the deer are and where to put your stand. Whereas I just park my stand somewhere I think looks good and have at it. Now, for the last 14 years, I've been hunting with a Thompson Center Encore chambered in .243 with a 14.5-inch barrel. But you say, Tiny, you said your area only can use shotguns and pistols. The N pistols is the key phrase of that. In Minnesota, a Thompson Center pistol sold as a frame only or a pistol is legal for deer hunting according to the DNR, as long as they meet the caliber restrictions, are under 16-inch barrel length, and under 26 inches overall. And for caliber restrictions, until 2008, you couldn't even hunt a deer with a .223. It was considered inhumane. Now, since 2008, there have been two things that have come into vogue in my area of Minnesota. AR pistols of various calibers and the Savage .220 bolt-action fully rifled 20-gauge slug gun. These guns are so popular that stores can barely keep them, or the Sabo ammo for rifled barrel ammunition in stock. In fact, this last August I started looking for ammo for members of my family and hunting party, and there was few boxes on the shelves 3 months before deer season. Again, you may ask, what is so special about a cheap Canadian bolt-action shotgun? Well, technology in shotguns has come a long way. The .220 is using a saboted rifled slug, which has nearly the same ballistics as a .223 out to about 200 yards. And in my personal experience, my sister has taken 3 deer at over 150 yards with her .220. And many of the neighbors have switched to using them as well. Those that have not are using hand-me-down weapons for sentimental reasons, or started using AR pistols chambered in .300 Blackout, .203, .65 Grendel, or any other legal caliber. And there's even some that are using muzzleloaders, like I talked about before. And our muzzleloader season, if it's during the primitive arms season, you're not even allowed to have a scope on your muzzleloader. It's completely, bone stock. If you have any questions or if you want to know some more about some kind of hunting, let Weer'd and Aaron know. I'm sure they'll be happy to forward along. And always remember, when you tell somebody something, it depends on what part of the United States you are standing as to just how dumb you are.
Yeah, Aaron, I believe from our talking, you have like zero interest in hunting.
Yes. So, as I have said before, I have no problem with other people hunting. I'm not a bleeding heart. I know that we get our food, our meat, from killing animals. And if you are a hunter, that's fine. I just don't want to do it because I can't bring myself to kill an animal because they're cute and fluffy and they aren't hurting me. It's going to sound awful, but I can visualize killing a human being because I don't like people. But in general, animals, they don't hurt me. They don't offend me. They don't come after me. I would kill one in self-defense like a mountain lion, but I wouldn't go out and try and kill one. So if you're a hunter, I have no problem with you. Keep doing it. I don't want to do it. It's not that I have no interest. I have negative interest. Don't make me do it. Just to put a cap on it and tell you what a complete squish I am. One time I went fishing with a friend, and it was time to put the bait on the hook, and the worm was alive. And I couldn't make myself put the worm on the hook because the worm was moving around, and it's like, but that hook is going to hurt it, and I don't want to hurt the worm. So that's me. Yeah.
That's understandable, and I'll let you know that Dr. Matt Carricker of Demolition Ranch fame, the big time gun nut, big shooter, he has hunted and does hunt, and I believe he has done some pest control because he does have some livestock on his property, and has lost some to various varmint type creatures. But overall, he also has a distaste for hunting personally, in the fact that he's a veterinarian and an animal lover, and he doesn't like to kill them.
Mm-hmm.
And I can totally get that. But I totally understand it, and I totally empathize with it. But it's not something that I personally share. I am the person who is obsessed with ducks and finds them to be so cute and so adorable, but I am also aware that there's yummy meat inside, and I love duck meat. And and I've got no problem with being the guy that takes that out. And that's the thing where I really want to hunt is I specifically want to hunt like hogs or white-tailed deer. Those are the two species that I really want to target. And the big thing is that I like the outdoors, and I like hunting. I like going off into the woods. I like guns, and I like shooting things. And I'm a stay-at-home dad. I'm essentially a semi-pro chef, and I've got veterinary surgical background. So there's that intersection between anatomy, surgery, and butchery that all exists. Where, you know, I think I'd be really good at it. I think I'd really enjoy it. And I watch hunting videos, and I see like people like shooting like a wild turkey, and then they just fillet out the breast meat, and they like leave the legs and the wings. And I'm like, but wait, I understand that they're probably not as good as a domesticated turkey that doesn't have the ability to fly and doesn't really do much but stroll around the barnyard and pecking at its food bowl. But I'd love to see if I could use my cooking skills to make it good.
All right. So if you want to hunt, why don't you?
It's mostly just time and just figuring out which hoops to jump through, because I know I need a permit, and I need to find a place to go, and all of that. And I'm busy all the time. And so it's one of those like, cool, win. So we'll see. It's something just that's in the back of my mind. If it was something that was a super duper burning desire, I would have done it by now. But yeah, so it's one of those things that I really want to do it, but it's not strong enough that I want to make it happen. And I definitely want to do that thing. So, yeah, someday I hope. And of course, as the person who does the weird audio fisks, and you've heard this all the time, I wanted to point out that hunting, Tiny talks about hunting laws, and I note that a lot of anti-gunners have the talking point of, oh, we have magazine limits for hunting, and I note that that's to preserve wild game for future generations. It's so that we don't kill all the animals, and then nobody's got them. And but while I want, like, you know, turkeys and deer and ducks and things like that for future generations to hunt and enjoy, I'm totally fine with muggers, rapists, and spree killers going the way of the passenger pigeon.
Yeah, we don't need to conserve them.
Yeah, and we frequently talk about how gun laws are seen as damage and the community roots around them. Hunting laws aren't quite like that, but it gets close. Tiny was mentioning about the hunting with sabots and sabots, sabots. I think it's one of those there. It's like carbine and carbine. They're both acceptable pronunciations.
Well, I mean, okay, technically it is French, and so the proper French pronunciation, the proper French pronunciation is sabot, hence sabotage. But yes, if you want to Americanize it, because 2 world wars, sabotage. So sabot. Yeah, you can do that.
And actually, I didn't realize that sabo was the root word for sabotage.
Did you not watch Star Trek VI?
Which one was that one?
The last one with the original crew, where they were talking about how during the Industrial Revolution, well, okay, first of all, sabo means shoe, I think, or sandal.
Correct.
And so they were saying that during the Industrial Revolution, you've got these workers who are concerned that the shoemaking machines are going to put them out of business. And so they would throw their shoes into the machines in order to break them, slow them down, whatever. And this act became known as sabotage.
Interesting. I'm pretty sure I think I've seen all the Star Trek movies, but I am not much of a Trekkie, so.
6 is one of the really, really good ones. I'm not going to risk the wrath of the internet by saying it's as good or better than Wrath of Khan, because people have really strong opinions on it. But it is like, okay, close second. You know, it's really, really good. I really liked Star Trek 6.
Well, I mean, you're in good company, because I'm the one that will frequently say that Alien 3 is the best movie in the series, and that makes people very angry, because Aliens is very, very good, but boy, the dark David Fincher vision of a prison planet is awful delicious. So it is a wonderful atmosphere for a dark sci-fi. And yes, I did see the I did see Star Trek 6. I just don't remember that scene. But but as far as the sabos, back to the point that I was trying to make, is that you will often see, oh, this area is shotgun hunting only, meaning that, it's often an area that has is much more thickly settled than a you're not off in the middle of the woods, and the idea being that an errant rifle round might get away from you and then might end up hitting a house or hitting someone in their yard or a passing car or something like that. And so they want shotguns to limit the amount of range that the guns can be deadly at. And then the gun industry says, cool, well, can we use rifled shotguns? Yeah, I guess you can use rifled shotguns. Okay, cool. Well, what if we put a sabot into the rifled shotgun? And since the sabot will have better range, we can put a scope onto the end of it. So essentially, you can turn that shotgun into essentially a rifle, and just sidestep the shotgun only hunting areas.
Mm-hmm.
So the hunters also see hunting laws as damage and root around it.
So you know what roots around our listeners?
Thank you for diving on that grenade for me, Eric. Yes, we love our listeners, each and every one of you. But I must give a very special thanks to all our supporters on Patreon. To become a Patreon patron, go to patreon.com/Assorted Calibers Podcast to sign up. Patrons get an early release of the podcast, plus bonus content like the hilarious blooper reels, the ACP film tracks, and the ACP Mag Dump.
Also, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share the show with your friends, both online and off.
I've got a blog. It's called WeirWorld.com, and you can also hear me weekly on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network.
And I've got a Linktree, which is Linktree/Aaron Paulette. That's linktree.ee/Aaron Paulette, all one word.
And this music you're listening to, that's by Nate Spencer, and he's pretty cool.
You know who else is cool? Me. You know who isn't cool? Weer'd. Our coolness is assorted, and so's our podcast. I'm tired. Good night, everybody.
Please, may I have another?
You're ugly and your mother dresses you funny.
She used to.